Well, I'm not going to talk about taking away people's kids. But I will ask Bill Stepney. You know, I always think our chairman is brilliant, so I assumed he knew exactly what unique thinking you could bring. And I'm going to press you a little bit. In our pre-conference call, you talked about how your industry, the media industry, certainly wasn't frozen doing the equivalent of marching on Washington 50 years. Your industry moves fast. And so I wonder if that provides you some insights on how culture, since I'm hoping that's your specialty, can be harnessed. I mean, by the way, maybe this discussion on C-SPAN will reach hundreds of millions across the globe, and this by itself will convince them, but I'm a little dubious. So what else can we do?
Well, certainly, and I think, again, this is one step, because this will be a nationally broadcast opportunity to strengthen and encourage the discussion around these issues. And that's what we do in media and culture. You know, we spread thoughts and information, and from that, we hope that society engages in discourse to figure out where we should go next. And, you know, again, I'm struck by the fact that government seemed to do the right thing 45 years ago, in that there was at least a specific analysis of the problem of family structure as it pertained to African American communities. So government does the right thing, from what I understand, and I did read a bit of Professor Patterson's book. You know, Senator Moynihan, who was at that point Assistant Secretary of Labor Moynihan, got in trouble. Right. So at that point, government got in trouble for doing the right thing. So, you know, we're struggling trying to figure out, well, you know, how can we get government to do the right thing? When it does the right thing, we get mad. When it does the wrong thing, we keep quiet. For instance, after the Moynihan report, from what I understand of history, we changed public policy not to discourage single parenting and unmarried childbearing, but to encourage. The public policy changes from family financial supports going to widows to now going to unmarried mothers. So we then fast forward, because of government and those policies essentially reinforcing the matriarchy that Moynihan talked about. My business then has all these young men who've been raised, in essence, in these matriarchal communities where they view women as an opposing, oppressive force the same way that they view police as authority figures. So all the vitriol, all the anger that you hear in the music sort of reverberates back to public policy in the mid-'60s. So that's why I'm very cautious when we talk about, you know, what can government do? I think I failed Latin in high school, actually, and there was the Latin term primum non nocere, right? Which was the medical injunction, first do no harm. And I think that's what we're demanding of government at this point, given the fact that government for so many years did probably not so much good stuff for our families and our communities, and our culture represents that. Now, there are other things going on. 3 years ago, Will Smith, biggest film star in the world, makes a film called The Pursuit of Happiness, which was based on the story of Chris Gardner, a single father, custodial, trying to navigate the difficult system of public policy that benefits single custodial mothers but has nothing to say and no supports for single custodial fathers. Once again, giving the stiff arm to the father, and once again, government doing the wrong thing. Media shows the story of the struggles of Will Smith in that film, and it's a very successful film, makes $200 million. Tyler Perry, who has become a very successful filmmaker within the African American community, 3 weeks after the release of of The Pursuit of Happiness, releases his own film called Daddy's Little Girls, also a film about a single father struggling to gain access to his kids as he's prevented by the court system. Once again, government kind of doing the wrong thing. So, you know, we have two things going on. The culture, I think, recognizes on the ground and organically that there's been a problem in terms of family structure, public policy, and the culture. But we are now just beginning to have the conversation from a governmental public policy, civil rights level, that perhaps some disparities were created by public policy as it pertains to family structure that we have to deal with. So I say pay attention to the culture sometimes because it can inform government.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to have a lightning round, 1 minute each, because in 4 minutes I'm going to turn it over to the audience, so I suppose this is your 4-minute warning. And I'm going to ask each of you to try to limit it to a minute, but this question is suggested by Professor Wax's book. She distinguishes, and you can correct me if I mischaracterize it, between brick wall discrimination, which was the old de jure discrimination, and hard struggles. And your thesis, I believe, is that the world is a matter of hard struggles. But here I'm going to tee off the question with one of your questions. Is it possible to pursue an arduous program of self-improvement while simultaneously thinking of oneself as a victim of grievous mistreatment and of one's shortcomings as a product of external forces?
Well, I'm going to answer that with an anecdote, something that occurred to me after I wrote the book. I grew up in a fairly devout Jewish family, working-class Jewish family, under not in poverty, but under austere circumstances that to my children are just inconceivable, my pampered children. Anyway, and there was a lot of talk in my community, very close-knit community, about how Jews have been oppressed and persecuted and all the horrible things that had happened to Jews throughout history. This was a constant drumbeat. But I can tell you, never once in my entire childhood and adolescence did I ever hear an individual in my community either explain or excuse their own failings based on anti-Semitism or discrimination. Never once. If someone had ever said, well, the reason that I dropped out of school, or the reason that I got fired from my job, or left the mother of my children, or committed a crime is because of anti-Semitism, that's the reason that I did it, or because Jews are discriminated against, they would have been sneered at, laughed out of the community. I mean, this would not have been tolerated. This was not the way we thought about ourselves, our individual lives and destinies. So I think it is possible to be conscious of the terrible things that have happened to you, of the facts of your history, and still have a strong sense of agency and of responsibility and have control over your own destiny. I think that is possible. And I think the challenge for the Black community is to find a way to hold those two ideas simultaneously in mind, right, and act upon them.
I think that the way to do that is to rededicate, what I said is like a broken record, to rededicate ourselves to the celebration of the pursuit of excellence, to rededicate ourselves to a commitment to the pursuit of educational excellence. It is possible for you to pursue excellence 24/7 and at the same time saying, you know, I've had it, it's been rough, or I know A, B, C, and D have not been treated fairly, but the fact is, there's a sense of individual responsibility and personal pride and commitment that has to say that I'm going to do it, that I can do it.
Thank you.
And I will do it.
Clarence?
Sorry? Oh.
Either of you two?
Clarence?
I'm sorry.
You meant to Bill.
Yeah, Bill, I'm sorry.
Oh, do you want me to respond?
Yeah,
to?
no, I mean, do you have a thought on this subject?
Yeah, No, I mean, I have a concluding thought.
Sure.
Pursuant to what the media industry and technology industry looks like. I just think that we need to be more privately entrepreneurial about these sorts of issues, that, we treat social disparity, structural disparity in the same way we treat the formation of Apple, of Google, of Facebook, of YouTube, of, all of these very successful institutions that have been developed over the course of the, past decade? When we think of some of the private institutions that we rely on to discuss and or address these issues, most of those organizations are like a century old. So, we've been on automatic pilot for attempting to address from an organizational entity and institutional standpoint these issues for about 90 years. So I think we need to infuse the thinking and best practices for addressing family structure for poverty and otherwise with the same creative entrepreneurial energy that we approach, developing on the web and developing technology in other sectors.
I think the problem is the messages that come from minorities that are successful, that too often those are the ones that are telling everyone else how racist the society is, how you can never get ahead. And many of them are people in academia, and it's not just the minorities, it's also the white liberal professors at the elite institutions that are making public policy about issues that they study. At best, they may have gone in the field for 6 months or a year and studied a problem, but they've never lived it. And I think as long as we have academia having so much influence and people from the Ivy League having so much influence and guilt-ridden, affluent minorities that, they're guilt-ridden, and so they look at their brother, and then the best they can do is tell them that society is stacked against you, you can't make it. Amy is right that if you really, there's something about the whole culture, and I know we're not supposed to talk political party, but there are too many people that have a vested interest in blinding the people to what they are capable of doing. And so I think that we need to send new messages to young people, and it doesn't have to be other minorities sending the message. Again, many of the mentors I've experienced were not people that look like me, same race or same gender. And I think that we have to counter that message, but we also have to make sure that the people that get into public policy roles, the people that get appointed to the Supreme Court, that get appointed to positions of power are not all the people from the Ivy League. We need people from that other part of America, the real America.